we saw where Taylor Swift, and Caleb's a huge Taylor Swift fan, was named the time. He really is, Jimmy. You're smiling, but he is. And I go to Metallica concerts. He goes to Taylor Swift. I actually went to a Taylor Swift concert in a movie theater that was pretty neat. Her Eras tour. So she's a big star. Are you a Taylor Swift person at all, Jimmy?
Yeah, I like Taylor Swift. I like her music. I think she's really good. I also think that, and there have been times when they had this Ticketmaster mess and she was apologetic about it. They had an issue with somebody got overheated at one of her concerts. She was sympathetic to that. And she dates a football player. What's not to like?
It's perfect. Here we go. It's today's tough question brought to you by Andy Mason of AndyMasonRealEstate.com. It has to do with Taylor Swift as we look at the Vols, who had the best year in 2023. Today's tough question.
Today's tough question. Take a side. Take a stand. The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of OffTheHookSports.com.
So this is on our YouTube page. You can go ahead and vote now, and I'm not going to lie to you. It was difficult to come up with 4 choices. Jimmy and I texted this morning, and last year they would have been coming out the wazoo, Jimmy. Yeah. There were plenty of people to choose from, but who would be Time's Ball of the year? Who had the best year in 2023? And Jimmy, I want to start with you and then go to Caleb, and then I'll share our choices that are on our YouTube page, and you can vote right now. It's brought to you by Andy Mason, best prices, best service in the biz. AndyMasonRealEstate.com. If you're in East Tennessee, you need to be with Andy Mason for your real estate needs. AndyMasonRealEstate.com. Jimmy, your choice?
Well, for the calendar year of 2023, I've got Tony Vitello, Tennessee baseball. They were not supposed to be as good as they were a year ago, and they weren't as good, but they made the College World Series for the second time in 3 years. He gets a packed crowd at Lindsey Nelson Stadium. They even have watch parties outside. Can you believe that, a watch party for baseball games? And yet you got a bunch of fans that are sitting outside watching the baseball game on big screen TVs and having tailgating. I never thought I'd see that at Tennessee baseball. And I think he's arguably – he's one of the most – well, it's not arguable. It's arguable about whether he is the most popular, but he's certainly one of the most popular coaches on campus. So I'm going to go with Tony Vitello.
All right. Caleb, what about you?
Well, I'm going to stick with one of the 2 revenue-producing sports. And that will be, believe it or not, Santiago Vescovi. He was the best player on a Tennessee basketball team that went to the Sweet 16, and we've all covered men's Tennessee basketball long enough. I don't care how good they are in the regular season. We all know getting to the Sweet 16 seems like the biggest hurdle in the world for them. And so he did get him to the Sweet 16, and then he decided to come back for another year of eligibility after doing that when he didn't have to. So I'm going to go Santi Vescovi because he was the most valuable player in one of the 2 sports that actually makes money.
Okay, I'm going to go a little out on left field for those that watch the program on a regular basis, and please hit that like and subscribe button. We greatly appreciate that. I'm going to go Joe Milton, and here's why, Jimmy. And I know you and I both have openly questioned his ability to win at a high level, and I think that's been proven this year. But ultimately, I think Cooper Mays was the reason for the loss at Florida. I think Missouri just outcoached Tennessee. I was told by a couple of guys there was a completely different defense on the field than they had ever seen before. Alabama, I think Josh Heupel outcoached himself, and Georgia's Georgia. So in the end, Joe Milton at the very least held his own, and this is an 8-4 season. That is a slight disappointment, but Tennessee is still trending upwards. So as bizarre as it sounds, I'm going to go Joe Milton. Am I crazy?
It is bizarre. It would be hard for me to pull the trigger on that one. It's funny. He's not the most popular quarterback Tennessee's ever had. It is, I'm sure you know. If he could play Vanderbilt every game, yeah. He had too many ups and downs for me. He was too inconsistent. I do like the fact that he stuck it out. I like the fact that even when he lost the job to Hendon Hooker, he stayed around. And I do think he was a good leader for this team. But I just did not think his performance merited being the Vol of the Year.
It certainly wouldn't have last year, Caleb. I think this is a year where there's not a great candidate, so it gives us the ability to go in kind of a different direction.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know if he's on the list of obviously Hooker, Hyatt, Heupel, all those. I mean,
Right.
Jimmy, if you did this last year, and Caleb, I want to get your thoughts too. If you did this last year, would they be all Vols if you picked 4 finalists?
Probably. Hendon Hooker would lead the way. I thought Hendon Hooker, well, he was a Heisman Trophy candidate. He would have been a finalist if he hadn't been hurt. And if you look at his statistics, you could argue it was the greatest season of any Tennessee quarterback in history. His numbers, the points scored, leading the nation in points and in total offense. It's the 27 touchdowns to 2 interceptions. No Tennessee quarterback ever had a ratio like that before. He also adds the running ability that a Peyton Manning did not have, or a Casey Clausen. So I would start with Hooker. Hyatt would be in there. Heupel would be in there. Those would certainly be 3 of them. Not sure who my 4th football player would be, but those would certainly be 3 of them.
Another one, Caleb, that has gotten some attention on the message board, as I'm sorry I didn't have your Santiago Vescovi when I put the poll up. My apologies. But right now I got Joe Milton, Danny White, Tennessee's athletic director, Tony Vitello, Rickea Jackson, Lady Vol. And it is split right down the middle, 25% with our votes. And it's early. We'll see where these things shake out. But now Joe Milton seems to have a slight lead as well. What do you think of some of those other candidates, Caleb, Danny White, Rickea Jackson?
Well, I'll start just real quick to comment on, piggyback off your Joe Milton thing. He was the quarterback of an 8-4 Tennessee team, which is probably the second best Tennessee team since Fulmer was fired. And so he's the quarterback of the second best team in the last 15 years in the sport that is 90% of all the importance of Tennessee athletics. So we got to be fair to him on that. Football, I'd say 90%. I'd say men's basketball, 7%. Women's basketball, 2.5%. Baseball, 0.4%. And then everything else, 0.1%. So I mean, you know, but I get Danny White, but I wouldn't use Danny White this year. Danny White to me would have been the Vol of the Year in 2021 when he hired Josh Heupel and really, you know, saved the program to a certain degree. I think this year and also Danny White did a lot of other important things. But look, Danny White has been very ahead of the curve in terms of generating revenue, getting Tennessee out in front on NIL. That's been a really big deal. While a lot of you've seen so many other schools and athletic directors and coaches fight tooth and nail to not have NIL, Danny White was ready to go on this the minute the Supreme Court ruling happened in 2021. And he had only been athletic director for 6 months. And he got Tennessee right out ahead of the curve, and they've had the best and largest NIL collective since. That's a big testament to him. But I can't say him specifically this year. There's just not a great candidate this year. By the way, also, Jimmy, just to push back, I still think Peyton Manning's 1997 season was better than Hendon Hooker's season last year, only because the era was different. I get it, not statistically, but he was playing in a different era. A totally different era. So I'm still going. And in terms of raw production, I do think Peyton Manning still had the most total yards of any quarterback in 97. I think that's still number 1.
As much as I could do an hour on you guys arguing, which would include punting, I want to remind you that portions of the program are brought to you by Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn, because I've never asked Jimmy's opinion on Danny White as a whole. I didn't think this was his best year, frankly. Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn. Enjoy life better when you see better. The local vision service for LASIK, cataract surgery, and regular eye examination. Look at me. No contacts, no glasses, ccteyes.com. And they're local, and they care about you. Your thoughts on Danny White as a whole? I thought he had done a fantastic job. I was not crazy, I'll be honest with you, because I know some of the agreements made with Thompson Bowling Arena and the Thompson and Bowling family that to make that the Food City Center. That was the first time he did something that I thought kind of stepped away from his consistency as a really well-liked athletic director. What are your thoughts in general, and then with the Food City Center?
Well, I'll start with the Food City Center. I know the B. Ray Thompson family wasn't very happy about it. They're the ones that got this thing going, and I think that it still should be Thompson Bowling Arena. I guess you could say TBA at Food City, but Here's the thing about an athletic director in deference to a head coach. A head coach is based on his win-loss record, right? With an athletic director, there's so many different tentacles. The success of the coaches around him. What kind of revenue are you raising? What are you doing to help bring Wi-Fi to Neyland Stadium? There's just so many different elements of this. Here's one element. Here's one part of Danny White's equation I'll give him credit for. It's not just that he hired Josh Heupel to fix football. And to me right now, it has been fixed based on where it was. But he also wasn't an athletic director that came in and said, I have to hire all of my guys. So he came in. If you look at the top 5 revenue sports at Tennessee and those that are either those that are most high profile, not revenue producing, but high profile, somebody else hired the softball coach. Somebody else hired the baseball coach. Somebody else hired the women's basketball coach and the men's basketball coach. And he didn't come in and clean house and say, I got to have my own people in here. So he stuck with them. And that's one reason Tennessee the last 2 years has won the all sports trophy in the SEC. So I give him credit for not letting his ego get in the way and saying, I have to hire my guys. So, and when you look at the success of the Tennessee program, it's unprecedented all around. So I give him a lot of credit for that.